First contact. The vast expanse of space had always held mysteries, but none quite as profound as the day the Zephyrians made contact with Earth. It was a crisp autumn morning when the sleek, crystalline ships descended from the clouds, their iridescent hulls refracting sunlight in mesmerizing patterns. Humanity held its collective breath, uncertain whether this moment would mark the dawn of a new era or the twilight of their existence. As it turned out, the Zephyrians were not conquerors but explorers, driven by an insatiable curiosity about the universe and its myriad forms of life. They were a race of beings as different from humans as one could imagine. Their bodies composed of a shimmering, translucent material that pulsed with bioluminescent energies. Communication was initially challenging, but the Zephyrians' advanced technology quickly bridged the gap, allowing for real-time translation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, Earth's leading xenobotanist, was among the first to interact with the alien visitors. As she stood in the improvised meeting area, a hastily cleared hangar at a military base, she couldn't help but marvel at the grace with which the Zephyrians moved. Their elongated limbs seemed to float rather than walk, and their large, multifaceted eyes absorbed every detail of their surroundings. "Welcome to Earth," Elena said, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "We are honored by your presence and eager to learn from you." The Zephyrian leader, who had introduced himself as Zilna, inclined his head in a gesture that seemed both regal and friendly. "The honor is ours, Dr. Rodriguez. Your world is fascinating. So vibrant, so diverse. We have not encountered a planet quite like it in our travels." Over the next few days, as diplomatic talks progressed and cultural exchanges began, Elena found herself spending more and more time with the Zephyrian scientists. They were particularly interested in Earth's plant life, a subject that aligned perfectly with Elena's expertise. "You see," Zilna explained during one of their discussions, "on our world, Zephyria, we have long since mastered the art of botanical engineering. Our plants are marvels of efficiency and purpose, each species designed to fulfill specific roles in our ecosystem and society." Elena listened, fascinated but also slightly unsettled by the clinical way the Zephyrians approached nature. "And what of wild plants?" she asked. "Surely you have species that evolved naturally." Zilna's bioluminescent patterns shifted in what Elena had come to recognize as amusement. "Once, long ago. But we found them inefficient, unpredictable. It was far more practical to design our flora to suit our needs." As the days turned into weeks, Elena and her team arranged for the Zephyrians to visit various ecosystems around the globe. They marveled at the lush rainforests of the Amazon, the resilient flora of the African savannas, and the hardy plants of the Arctic tundra. Yet, for all their apparent wonder, there was always an undercurrent of something else in their reactions. It took Elena some time to place it, but eventually she realized what it was: condescension. The revelation came during a visit to the Royal Botanic Gardens in Kew, London. As they strolled through the magnificent glasshouses, Zilna paused before a display of carnivorous plants, his multifaceted eyes focused on a Venus flytrap, its jaws open and waiting. "Interesting," he mused, "but rather primitive, don't you think? On Zephyria, we have plants that not only capture insects but process them into nutrients that can be directly absorbed by other flora in the vicinity. Much more efficient." Elena felt a spark of defensiveness. "Perhaps," she conceded, "but there's beauty in the natural evolution of these plants. They've adapted to their environments over millions of years, finding unique solutions to survival." Zilna's body pulsed with that now familiar pattern of amusement. "Adaptation is admirable, Dr. Rodriguez, but it's also slow and imprecise. Why leave things to chance when you can design perfection?" As they continued their tour, Elena found herself increasingly aware of the Zephyrians' dismissive attitude towards Earth's plant life. They found the redwoods impressive in size, but inefficient in resource utilization. The diversity of the rainforest was seen as chaotic rather than miraculous. Even the hardy desert plants, which Elena had always admired for their resilience, were viewed as unnecessarily stubborn in their will to survive. "You must understand," Zilna explained later, as they sat in the gardens, sipping tea, a beverage the Zephyrians had taken a surprising liking to. "On Zephyria, every plant, every organism has a purpose. There is no waste, no inefficiency. It's not that your Earth plants aren't charming in their own way, but they're relics of a less advanced age." Elena set down her teacup, choosing her words carefully. "With all due respect, Zilna, I think you're underestimating the complexity and value of our ecosystems. Yes, they may seem chaotic or inefficient from your perspective, but that very chaos has produced incredible diversity and resilience." Zilna's bioluminescence flickered in patterns that Elena couldn't quite interpret. Was it skepticism, amusement, or perhaps a hint of curiosity? "You're passionate about your work, Dr. Rodriguez. It's admirable. Perhaps we can arrange for some of your colleagues to visit Zephyria. You'll see then what true botanical mastery looks like." As the first month of the Zephyrians' visit drew to a close, preparations began for a reciprocal mission to their homeworld. Elena found herself both excited and apprehensive about the prospect. The chance to study an alien ecosystem was a dream come true, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the Zephyrians' attitude towards Earth's biodiversity was short-sighted. On the eve of the Zephyrians' departure, a farewell ceremony was held in New York's Central Park. As world leaders made speeches about new eras of cooperation and shared knowledge, Elena stood to the side, lost in thought. She was startled from her reverie by a light touch on her arm. It was Zelna, his crystalline form shimmering in the setting sun. "Dr. Rodriguez, I wanted to thank you personally for your hospitality and knowledge. Your passion for your world's flora is intriguing." Elena smiled, pushing aside her misgivings. "Thank you, Zilna. I look forward to seeing Zephyria and learning more about your approach to botanical science." As they spoke, a gentle breeze swept through the park, carrying with it a flurry of dandelion seeds. The delicate feathery structures danced on the air, some landing on Zilna's translucent form. He regarded them with a mixture of curiosity and mild disdain, brushing them off with a casual gesture. "Fascinating how your plants disperse their genetic material so haphazardly," he remarked. "On Zephyria, reproduction is much more controlled." Elena watched the seeds continue their journey on the wind, a sudden idea forming in her mind. "Zilna," she said, "I know you find our plants primitive, but would you be open to taking some seeds back to Zephyria, as a gesture of goodwill and cultural exchange?" Zilna seemed to consider for a moment, his bioluminescent patterns shifting rapidly. "An interesting proposal," he said finally. "I suppose it could be arranged, though I'm not sure what use they would be on our world." As the ceremony concluded and the Zephyrians prepared to depart, Elena hurried to gather a diverse selection of earth seeds. She included everything from hardy desert plants to fast-growing kudzu, from towering sequoias to humble grass seeds. As she handed the carefully packaged collection to Zilna, she felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. "A gift from Earth to Zephyria," she said. "May they bring our worlds closer together." Zilna accepted the package with grace, though Elena could sense a hint of amusement in his demeanor. As the Zephyrian ships rose into the sky, their crystalline forms glittering against the backdrop of stars, Elena couldn't help but wonder what would come of her impromptu gift. Little did she know that those small seeds would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything both humans and Zephyrians thought they knew about the nature of life and adaptation. The gift. The journey to Zephyria was unlike anything Dr. Elena Rodriguez had ever experienced. The Zephyrian ship, a marvel of biotechnology, seemed to bend the very fabric of space around it. As they traveled, Elena spent much of her time in the ship's arboretum, a vast chamber filled with meticulously arranged alien flora. Each plant was a work of art, their forms both beautiful and clearly engineered for maximum efficiency. "Impressive, isn't it?" Zilna's melodious voice startled Elena from her observations. The Zephyrian leader glided into the arboretum, his crystalline form refracting the soft ambient light. Each species here serves a specific purpose in our ecosystem. Nothing is wasted, nothing is random. Elena nodded, running her hand along a nearby leaf. Its surface was unnaturally smooth, almost metallic to the touch. "It's certainly remarkable," she admitted. "But I can't help but wonder about the plant's ability to adapt to unexpected changes. In a system this tightly controlled, how do you account for environmental shifts or new challenges?" Zilna's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in what Elena had come to recognize as a mixture of pride and mild condescension. "My dear Dr. Rodriguez, you're thinking in terms of your Earth's chaotic systems. On Zephyria, we don't leave such things to chance. Our environmental control systems ensure optimal conditions at all times." As they continued their tour, Elena couldn't shake a sense of unease. The perfection of the Zephyrian plants was undeniable, but there was something almost sterile about their beauty. She found herself missing the wild, unpredictable charm of Earth's flora. Their arrival on Zephyria was a spectacle that Elena knew she would never forget. The planet's surface was a masterpiece of ecological engineering. Vast fields of crystalline plants stretched as far as the eye could see, their colors shifting in mesmerizing patterns. Cities seamlessly integrated with the landscape, structures growing organically from the planet's crust. As the Earth delegation was led to their accommodations, Elena noticed something that piqued her curiosity. In a small, cordoned-off area near the spaceport, she saw what appeared to be a garden. But unlike the uniformity of the surrounding flora, this patch was a riot of different shapes and colors. "Zilna," she called out, pointing to the area. "What's that?" The Zephyrian leader's luminescence dimmed slightly, in what Elena had learned was a sign of mild embarrassment. "Ah, that. It's a project of sorts. We've planted the seeds you gifted us there." Elena's eyes widened in surprise. "You actually planted them. I thought you found our plants primitive." Zilna's form shimmered in what might have been a shrug. "We did. We do. But some of our scientists expressed interest in studying them. It's always beneficial to understand other life forms, even if they're less advanced." Over the next few weeks, Elena divided her time between studying the marvels of Zephyrian bioengineering and observing the progress of the Earth plants. To her surprise and delight, many of the seeds had sprouted and were growing vigorously. The Zephyrian scientists monitoring the garden seemed equally surprised, if somewhat bemused. "It's remarkable how chaotic their growth patterns are," one Zephyrian researcher, Xelo, commented as they watched a vine of kudzu rapidly climbing a support structure. "No sense of order or purpose." Elena smiled, feeling a surge of pride in Earth's resilient flora. "That's the beauty of it," Xelo. "They adapt to whatever environment they find themselves in. They don't need a predetermined purpose to thrive." As the days passed, Elena noticed a curious phenomenon. The Earth plants weren't just surviving in the alien environment. They were flourishing. The carefully controlled conditions that the Zephyrians maintained seemed to supercharge the growth of the terrestrial flora. Dandelions sprouted in every available patch of soil, their seeds carried on the artificial breezes. The kudzu vine had to be trimmed back daily to prevent it from overwhelming its designated area. What started as mild curiosity among the Zephyrian scientists soon turned into genuine interest. More and more of them could be found gathered around the Earth garden, discussing the plant's unexpected vitality and rapid growth. One afternoon, as Elena was examining a particularly robust sunflower, she overheard a conversation between two Zephyrian researchers. "Have you noticed how the native insects are drawn to these alien plants?" one asked, their bioluminescent patterns flickering rapidly in excitement. "Yes, it's most peculiar," the other replied. "Our engineered flora is designed to repel most insects unless pollination is required. But these Earth plants, they seem to attract a wide variety of species." Elena smiled to herself, remembering countless summer evenings on Earth, the air alive with the buzz of insects drawn to blooming flowers. It was a sound she hadn't realized she missed until that moment. As the weeks turned into months, the Earth Garden became something of a local attraction. Zephyrians from all walks of life would come to marvel at the seemingly chaotic yet vibrant display of terrestrial plant life. Elena found herself giving impromptu lectures on Earth's ecosystems, explaining concepts like natural selection and biodiversity to increasingly fascinated audiences. Zelna, who had initially viewed the garden as a quaint curiosity, began to show more interest. Elena often found him standing at the edge of the plot, his multifaceted eyes focused intently on the growing plants. "I must admit, Dr. Rodriguez," he said one day, his tone thoughtful, "there's something compelling about the adaptability of your Earth flora. They seem to thrive despite, or perhaps because of, their lack of specific engineering." Elena nodded, feeling the surge of pride. "That's the wonder of natural evolution, Zelna. These plants have faced countless challenges over millions of years. The ones you see here are the descendants of those that found ways to survive and adapt." As their stay on Zephyria neared its end, Elena was surprised to receive a request from the Zephyrian High Council. They wanted to expand the Earth Garden, to create a larger preserve for studying and showcasing the diverse plant life of Earth. "We believe there may be valuable lessons to be learned from your world's approach to botanical diversity," the Council's message stated. "While our engineered flora remains superior in many ways, the resilience and adaptability of Earth plants have impressed many of our scientists." Elena could hardly contain her excitement as she relayed the news to her team. It was more than she could have hoped for. A chance not just to study Zephyrian plants, but to introduce a piece of Earth to this alien world. As they prepared for their return journey, Elena spent one last evening in the Earth Garden. The air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers, a stark contrast to the usually odorless Zephyrian atmosphere. Insects buzzed lazily from plant to plant, their activities a chaotic dance compared to the precisely controlled behaviors of native Zephyrian fauna. Zelna joined her, his crystalline form glowing softly in the twilight. "You know, Dr. Rodriguez," he said, his tone contemplative, "when you first offered us these seeds, I thought it a quaint but ultimately useless gesture. I see now that I may have been hasty in my judgment." Elena smiled, touched by the admission. "That's the beauty of science, Zelna. It constantly challenges our preconceptions and opens our minds to new possibilities." As they stood there, surrounded by the thriving Earth plants, neither of them could have predicted the far-reaching consequences of this seemingly simple cultural exchange. The seeds of change had been planted, both literally and figuratively, and their growth would soon challenge the very foundations of Zephyrian society. Little did they know that back on Earth, Zephyrian plants were about to embark on their own journey of adaptation, setting the stage for a botanical revolution that would reshape both worlds. Unexpected growth. 6 months after Dr. Elena Rodriguez returned to Earth, the first reports of unusual plant activity on Zephyria began to trickle in. What had started as a controlled experiment in a small, cordoned-off garden had somehow spiraled into a planet-wide phenomenon. Elena was in her lab at the newly established Interstellar Botanical Research Center when she received an urgent communication from Zelna. The Zephyrian leader's usually composed demeanor was noticeably agitated, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing erratically. "Dr. Rodriguez," he began, his voice tense, "we require your expertise immediately. The Earth plants, they're not behaving as expected." Elena leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean, Zelna? Are they not thriving?" Zelna's form shimmered in what Elena had come to recognize as a mixture of frustration and bewilderment. "Quite the opposite, I'm afraid. They're thriving far beyond our projections. We're seeing growth patterns and adaptations that our models couldn't have predicted." Within days, Elena and a team of Earth's top botanists and ecologists were on their way back to Zephyria. As their ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, Elena gasped at the view below. The once uniformly organized landscape was now dotted with patches of green, brown, and a riot of other colors. stark contrasts to the crystalline hues of native Zephyrian flora. Upon landing, they were greeted by a visibly distressed Xelo, the Zephyrian researcher who had initially dismissed Earth plants as chaotic and purposeless. Dr. Rodriguez, Xelo said, his usual cool demeanor replaced by nervous energy. You must see this for yourself. Please, follow me. As they made their way through the city, Elena was struck by the changes. Vines of kudzu draped over sleek Zephyrian structures, their leaves a vibrant green against the iridescent surfaces. Dandelions poked through cracks in the crystalline pathways, their yellow flowers budding in the artificial breeze. But it was when they reached the outskirts of the city that the true scale of the change became apparent. The carefully manicured fields of engineered Zephyrian crops were now interspersed with swaths of earth grasses, wildflowers, and even young trees. How is this possible? Elena murmured, her scientific mind racing to understand the rapid spread and adaptation of the earth flora. Xelo's form pulsed with a mix of awe and concern. We believe it's a combination of factors. Our climate control systems, designed to provide optimal growing conditions for our engineered plants, seem to have supercharged the growth of Earth species. Additionally, our native pollinators have taken an unexpected liking to your flora, spreading seeds far beyond the initial garden. As they continued their tour, Elena and her team were introduced to a series of perplexing scenarios. Sunflowers had grown to twice their normal height, their massive heads tracking the movement of Zephyria's twin suns. A patch of earth wheat had crossbred with a Zephyrian grain crop, producing a hybrid with glowing golden kernels. Perhaps most surprisingly, some earth plants appeared to have developed rudimentary bioluminescent properties, likely in response to the light patterns of native Zephyrian flora. It's as if they're evolving in real time. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, one of Earth's leading experts in rapid plant evolution, remarked. The combination of Zephyria's controlled environment and the adaptability of Earth plants has created a botanical perfect storm. The Zephyrian scientific community was divided in its response to these developments. Some, like Xelo, were fascinated by the unexpected adaptability of Earth flora and eager to study the implications. Others viewed the spread of alien plants with alarm, fearing for the carefully balanced Zephyrian ecosystem. Zilna, caught between these competing viewpoints, turned to Elena for guidance. Dr. Rodriguez, when you gifted us these seeds, did you have any idea this might happen? Elena shook her head, still processing the magnitude of the changes around her. Honestly, no. We knew Earth plants were adaptable, but this level of rapid evolution and spread is unprecedented. It's both exciting and concerning. As days turned into weeks, Elena and her team worked tirelessly alongside Zephyrian scientists to understand and document the changes occurring across the planet. They discovered that it wasn't just the Earth plants that were evolving. The native Zephyrian flora was also showing signs of adaptation in response to the new competition. One afternoon, while examining a field where earth clover had intermingled with a Zephyrian nitrogen-fixing plant, Elena made a startling discovery. The Zephyrian plant, which had always grown in perfectly straight lines, was now exhibiting a more natural, sprawling growth pattern. More importantly, its efficiency in fixing nitrogen had increased dramatically. Zilna, Xelo, you need to see this, Elena called out, her voice filled with excitement. The two Zephyrians glided over, their forms shimmering with curiosity. Elena pointed to the intermingled plants. Look at how they're growing together. The Zephyrian plant is adapting, becoming more natural in its growth pattern, and its nitrogen fixation rates are off the charts. Xelo's bioluminescence pulsed rapidly as he processed this information. Fascinating. It's as if the presence of the earth clover is pushing our plant to evolve, to become more efficient in ways we never engineered. Zilna was quiet for a moment, his multifaceted eyes studying the plants intently. This is unexpected, he finally said. Our plants were designed to be perfect, unchanging. The idea that they could adapt, could improve themselves, It challenges everything we thought we knew about botanical engineering. As news of these discoveries spread, Zephyrian society found itself grappling with profound questions. The long-held belief in the superiority of their engineered flora was being challenged by the undeniable adaptability and resilience of Earth plants, and now by the unexpected evolution of their own species. Public opinion on Zephyria began to shift. What had initially been seen as an invasive threat was increasingly viewed with fascination and even admiration. Zephyrians began to cultivate Earth plants in their personal gardens, marveling at their rapid growth and vibrant colors. However, not everyone was pleased with these developments. A group of conservative Zephyrian scientists, led by the stern and traditional Voxren, voiced strong opposition to the continued spread of Earth flora. These alien plants threaten the very foundation of our society, Voxren declared in a public address, his form pulsing with agitation. Our engineered ecosystem has served us perfectly for millennia. We cannot allow it to be corrupted by this chaotic, unpredictable Earth life. Despite these concerns, the momentum of change seemed unstoppable. Earth plants continued to spread, adapting to every niche in the Zephyrian ecosystem. They grew in the crowns of towering crystal trees, floated in perfectly regulated waterways, and even found footholds in the barren, windswept plateaus that had long resisted Zephyrian attempts at cultivation. As the first year of this unexpected botanical revolution drew to a close, Alina found herself standing once again in the original Earth garden, now expanded to cover several acres. The once small plot had become a thriving ecosystem, a perfect blend of Earth and Zephyrian plant life. Zilna joined her, his crystalline form reflecting the colors of the setting suns. "You know, Dr. Rodriguez," he said, his voice thoughtful, "when we first met, I dismissed your world's plants as primitive and inefficient. I see now that I was wrong. There is a strength in their chaos, a resilience born from countless generations of adaptation." Elena smiled, reaching out to touch a nearby flower, a hybrid of earth rose and a bioluminescent Zephyrian bloom. Its petals glowed softly in the twilight, a living symbol of the unexpected union between their two worlds. "That's the beauty of life, Zilna," she replied. "It finds a way to thrive, to adapt, even in the most unexpected circumstances. Perhaps there's a lesson here for both our species." As they stood there, surrounded by the harmonious blend of two worlds' flora, neither Elena nor Zilna could have predicted the challenges that lay ahead. The plant's rapid evolution and spread were just the beginning. Soon, both Earth and Zephyria would face ecological changes on a scale neither planet had ever experienced. Changes that would test the limits of both human and Zephyrian ingenuity. Crisis point. 2 years had passed since the introduction of Earth plants to Zephyria, and the once meticulously ordered planet was now a world transformed. What had begun as a fascinating ecological experiment had rapidly evolved into a planet-wide crisis that threatened to upend millennia of Zephyrian environmental control. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the window of the hastily constructed Interplanetary Botanical Crisis Center, her eyes scanning the horizon. The view before her was a far cry from the uniform, crystalline landscape she had first encountered. Now, a wild tapestry of Earth and Zephyrian plants stretched as far as the eye could see, their colors and forms blending in ways that were both beautiful and alarming. "Dr. Rodriguez," a voice called from behind her. Elena turned to see Zilna entering the room, his usually graceful movements now marked by a sense of urgency. "The latest reports have come in. It's not good." Elena braced herself. "Tell me." Zilna's form pulsed with a mix of colors that Elena had come to recognize as distress and confusion. "The hybridization process has accelerated beyond our ability to track. We're seeing new plant species emerging daily, some with properties we can't even begin to understand." He projected a holographic map of Zephyria, dotted with swirling colors representing different plant species. The Earth-wheat Zephyrian grain hybrid has now spread to over 60% of our agricultural lands. Its yields are impressive, but we're not sure about its long-term impact on soil composition. Elena nodded, her mind racing. And what about the bioluminescent adaptations we observed in some Earth species? Zilna's form dimmed slightly. They've evolved. Some Earth plants are now exhibiting energy transfer capabilities, similar to our engineered flora. They're tapping into our power grids, Elena. We've had to shut down 3 major cities due to unexpected power fluctuations. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on Elena. What had started as a gift, a simple exchange of seeds, had spiraled into an ecological revolution that was reshaping an entire world. The implications were staggering. Just then, the door burst open, and Exilo rushed in, his usually composed demeanor replaced by visible agitation. Zilna, Dr. Rodriguez, you need to see this immediately. They followed Exilo to the research lab, where a team of human and Zephyrian scientists were gathered around a containment chamber. Inside, a plant unlike anything Elena had ever seen was growing at an alarming rate. Its leaves were a swirling mix of earth green and Zephyrian iridescence, and its flowers seemed to pulse with an inner light. We've nicknamed it the quantum bloom, Exilo explained, his voice a mix of awe and concern. It appears to be a hybrid of Earth's morning glory and our temporal shifting vines. But its properties are unprecedented. As they watched, the plant seemed to flicker in and out of existence, its growth accelerating and decelerating in irregular patterns. Is it moving through time? Elena asked, her scientific mind struggling to comprehend what she was seeing. Zilna's form pulsed rapidly. Not exactly. Our temporal shifting vines were designed to accelerate growth by manipulating localized time fields. This hybrid seems to have taken that ability and evolved it. It's not just growing faster, it's probabilistically exploring multiple growth patterns simultaneously. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. The implications of such a plant existing in the wild were staggering. Have you found any of these outside the lab? Exilo's luminescence dimmed. We've detected similar energy signatures in several locations across the planet. They're spreading, Elena, and we don't know how to contain them. The crisis had reached a tipping point. Over the next few weeks, reports flooded in from across Zephyria. The carefully managed weather patterns, maintained for millennia by advanced technology, were beginning to fluctuate wildly. In some regions, Earth plants had formed symbiotic relationships with Zephyrian flora, creating vast networks that tapped into and redirected the planet's energy flows. Voxrin, the conservative Zephyrian scientist who had initially opposed the introduction of Earth plants, now led a vocal movement calling for drastic measures. We must eradicate these alien species before it's too late, he declared in a planet-wide broadcast. Our world, our way of life, is under threat. But it wasn't just Zephyria facing challenges. Back on Earth, the Zephyrian plants that had been brought for study were exhibiting their own unexpected behaviors. Reports came in of bioluminescent Zephyrian flowers interfering with wireless communications and engineered Zephyrian trees growing at such rates that they threatened infrastructure. As the crisis deepened, both human and Zephyrian authorities realized they were dealing with a problem beyond the scope of anything they had faced before. Emergency summits were called, bringing together the brightest minds from both worlds. Elena found herself at the center of these discussions, her expertise in both Earth and Zephyrian botany making her a crucial link between the two species. But even she felt overwhelmed by the scale and complexity of the problem. We're not just dealing with ecological change, she explained during one high-level meeting. These plants are rewriting the rules of biology as we know them. They're adapting and evolving at rates we've never seen before, incorporating traits from both our worlds in unpredictable ways. Zelna, who had been working tirelessly alongside Elena, added, "Our attempts at containment have been ineffective. Traditional methods of controlling plant growth don't work on these hybrids. They adapt almost as quickly as we can develop countermeasures." The situation reached a critical point when a vast network of quantum blooms was discovered in Zephyria's main agricultural region. The plant's temporal shifting abilities were causing chaos in the carefully regulated growing cycles, threatening the planet's food supply. Desperate times called for desperate measures. A joint task force of human and Zephyrian scientists was formed, charged with finding a solution before both planets' ecosystems were irrevocably altered. Elena found herself working around the clock, her days a blur of research, experiments, and emergency meetings. She was running on caffeine and determination, acutely aware that the fate of two worlds might rest on their ability to understand and control this botanical revolution. One evening, as she was poring over data in the crisis center, she felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. It was Zelna, his form glowing softly in the dim light. "Elena," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "you need to rest. We all do. We can't solve this if we burn ourselves out." Elena sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. "I know, but every minute we delay could mean another new hybrid, another ecological shift we can't predict or control." Zelna's form pulsed with what Elena had come to recognize as empathy. "True, but consider this. Perhaps our approach has been flawed from the start. We've been trying to control these plants, to force them back into the patterns we understand. But they've shown us, time and again, that they're beyond our control." Elena looked up at him, intrigued. "What are you suggesting?" "Perhaps," Zelna said, his tone thoughtful, "instead of trying to control this new biology, we need to learn to work with it, to understand it on its own terms." As Elena pondered Zelna's words, an alert sounded from her computer. New data was coming in from a research station near Zephyria's equator. As she pulled up the report, her eyes widened in disbelief. "Zelna," she breathed, "you need to see this." The report detailed a new phenomenon occurring in a region dense with Earth-Zephyrian hybrids. The plants seemed to be working in concert, creating a complex network that was actively stabilizing the local climate and soil conditions. "It's as if," Elena murmured, her mind racing with the implications, "they're creating their own ecosystem, one that balances the needs of both Earth and Zephyrian species." Zelna's form brightened as he processed this information. Could this be a natural solution emerging from the chaos? As they delved deeper into the data, a glimmer of hope began to emerge. The crisis was far from over, but perhaps in the interface between Earth's chaotic adaptability and Zephyria's engineered precision, a new kind of balance was possible. The path forward was unclear and fraught with challenges, but for the first time in months, Elena felt a sense of optimism. The plants that had brought their worlds to the brink of ecological disaster might also hold the key to a new, harmonious future. As the first light of Zephyria's twin suns began to peek over the horizon, Elena and Zelna set out to share their discovery with the rest of the team. They knew that the hardest work was still ahead, but they were ready to face it. Together, as representatives of two worlds united by an unprecedented botanical adventure. Collaboration and understanding. The dawn of a new era broke over Zephyria, its twin suns casting a warm glow over a landscape transformed. In the 5 years since the introduction of Earth plants to this alien world, both Zephyria and Earth had undergone changes that would have once been thought impossible. What had started as a crisis had evolved into something altogether more profound, a revolution in the understanding of life itself. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the edge of what had once been called the crisis zone, now known as the Harmony Fields. Before her stretched a vista that took her breath away every time she saw it. Earth plants and Zephyrian flora grew side by side, their forms blending in ways that defied easy categorization. Bioluminescent earth flowers pulsed in rhythm with Zephyrian energy-conducting vines. Towering trees with leaves of iridescent crystal provided homes for a myriad of hybrid species. It's still hard to believe, isn't it? The familiar voice of Zelna came from beside her. The Zephyrian leader's crystalline form shimmered in the morning light, his bioluminescent patterns a calm, steady glow. Elena nodded, a smile playing on her lips. "Every day, it seems we discover something new. Who would have thought that our greatest crisis would lead to our greatest breakthrough? Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Xelo, the once skeptical Zephyrian scientist, who had become one of the most enthusiastic proponents of the new hybrid ecology. Elena, Zilna. Xelo called out, his form pulsing with excitement. You must come see this. The quantum blooms have done it again. They followed Xelo to a nearby research station, where a team of human and Zephyrian scientists were gathered around a holographic display. The image showed a vast network of roots and mycelium, pulsing with energy. We've confirmed it, Xelo explained, his voice brimming with awe. The quantum blooms aren't just adapting to their environment. They're actively terraforming it. They're creating microclimates that support both Earth and Zephyrian species, and they're doing it with a level of precision that our most advanced systems could never achieve. Elena leaned in, studying the display intently. It's as if they've developed a collective intelligence, she mused. They're not just reacting to changes in their environment. They're anticipating them. Zilna's form pulsed with a mixture of curiosity and pride. To think, we once believed our engineered plants to be the pinnacle of botanical evolution. These hybrids have shown us that there is always more to learn, always room for growth and adaptation. As they discussed the implications of this latest discovery, Elena couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. The early days of the crisis had been fraught with fear and uncertainty. There had been calls for drastic measures, for the eradication of all Earth plants from Zephyria and vice versa. But in the face of that crisis, something remarkable had happened. Instead of retreating into fear and isolationism, both humans and Zephyrians had chosen to come together. The Joint Task Force, initially formed as an emergency measure, had evolved into a permanent institution, the Interstellar Botanical Cooperation Initiative, IBCI. Under the IBCI's guidance, the focus had shifted from control to cooperation. Instead of trying to force the hybrid plants into predetermined patterns, scientists from both worlds had learned to work with the new ecosystems to guide their growth in mutually beneficial directions. The results had been nothing short of revolutionary. On Zephyria, the once rigid environmental control systems had been replaced by a dynamic, adaptive network of hybrid plants. These new ecosystems were more resilient, more efficient, and more diverse than anything that had existed before. Earth, too, had reaped the benefits of this new approach. The integration of Zephyrian botanical technology had led to breakthroughs in sustainable agriculture, renewable energy, and even space exploration. Deserts bloomed with water-efficient hybrid plants, while bioluminescent trees provided natural, sustainable lighting for entire cities. But perhaps the most profound changes had been cultural. The botanical crisis had forced both species to confront their preconceptions and biases. Humans had learned the value of purposeful design and long-term planning from the Zephyrians, while the Zephyrians had come to appreciate the power of adaptability and natural selection. As Elena, Zilna, and Xelo made their way back to the main research facility, they passed by a group of young Zephyrians and humans working together in a hybrid garden. The sight brought a warm smile to Elena's face. "You know," she said, turning to her companions, "when I first gave you those earth seeds, I never could have imagined this outcome. I thought I was just sharing a small piece of my world with yours." Zilna's form shimmered with what Elena now recognized as affectionate amusement. "And instead, you sparked a revolution that has reshaped both our worlds. It just goes to show, Elena, that even the smallest actions can have far-reaching consequences." Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from Elena's communication device. It was a message from the IBCI headquarters on Earth. As she read it, her eyes widened with excitement. "They've done it," she breathed, looking up at Zilna and Xelo. "The first successful test of the interstellar seed vault is complete. We can now safely transport and preserve plant species across vast distances of space." The implications were staggering. With this technology, the lessons learned from the Earth-Zephyria Botanical Exchange could be applied on a galactic scale. New worlds could be explored and potentially terraformed using the adaptive power of hybrid plants. As the news spread, a sense of excitement and possibility swept through the research facility. Humans and Zephyrians alike were energized by the prospect of what lay ahead. The crisis that had once threatened to tear their worlds apart had instead brought them closer together, united in their quest for knowledge and understanding. Later that evening, as Zephyria's twin suns set in a spectacular display of color, Alina found herself back at the edge of the Harmony Fields. Zilna joined her, his crystalline form reflecting the vibrant hues of the sunset. "What are you thinking about, Alina?" he asked, his voice soft. Alina was quiet for a moment, her gaze sweeping over the breathtaking landscape before them. "I'm thinking about how far we've come," she finally said, "and how far we still have to go. There's so much more to learn, so many more worlds to explore." Zilna's form pulsed with agreement. "Indeed, and we will face those challenges as we have faced this one, together, with open minds and a willingness to adapt." As if in response to their words, a nearby quantum bloom unfurled its petals, its bioluminescent glow pulsing in a complex pattern. Alina and Zilna watched in fascinated silence as the plant seemed to shimmer in and out of reality, exploring multiple forms of growth simultaneously. "You know," Alina said, a note of wonder in her voice, "I used to think I understood plants. Now I realize we've only scratched the surface of what's possible. These hybrids, they're not just a combination of our two worlds. They're something entirely new, showing us possibilities we never even dreamed of." Zilna's form brightened in agreement, and that perhaps is the greatest gift to come out of this entire experience. We've learned that true strength lies not in rigid control or chaotic adaptability, but in finding the balance between the two, in being open to change while holding on to the wisdom of the past. As night fell over Zephyria, the Harmony Fields came alive with bioluminescence, a living testament to the unexpected journey that had brought two vastly different species together. Earth plants and Zephyrian flora, once separated by light years of space and millennia of divergent evolution, now grew side by side, their combined strength greater than the sum of their parts. And in that gentle glow, Alina and Zilna saw the promise of a future bright with possibility. A future where the boundaries between worlds would continue to blur, and where life, in all its wondrous diversity, would find new ways to thrive and evolve. The seeds of change had been planted, and the garden of the cosmos was ready to bloom.